Welcome to Broke Horse Moms, the podcast for all of us who thought our kids riding horses was just a phase. Turns out it wasn't, and honestly, I am so glad we were wrong. I'm your host, Angie Trueblood, the OG Broke Horse Mom, and I'm here to laugh, learn, and figure out this wild, wonderful sport right alongside you. Let's giddy up, friends. Hey friend, welcome to another episode of Broke Horse Moms. We are tackling horse leasing. We called it horse renting because that, to the outside person, is very much what it feels like or sounds like. We're really covering the contract and the cost piece of leasing horses. Now remember, I am figuring this out alongside of you, so I would not call myself an expert. We have leased 2 horses in the past. They've both been wonderful horses, but we are not leasing horses that come with a $40,000 purchase price as an example. So putting that into a bit of perspective as we have this conversation. We ended Horse Renting 101 with having a really solid idea of what a lease is, when it might make sense for you and your kiddo to lease instead of buying, or lease instead of continuing along a traditional lesson path. We high level covered a care lease versus a paid lease, on-site versus off-site. But I really wanted to take a second to get into what a lease could actually look like, because I have seen so many different types of leases from friends that have engaged in those types of agreements that I wanted to kind of open our eyes to what is possible and some things to think about as we might be looking to step into this next stage of horse mom life. So the first thing you'll want to cover, and I want to really caveat this entire episode with, it is super important to have a lease agreement in writing signed by both parties. Even if you are at a smaller lesson barn and the owner has communicated what you could get if you lease a horse, get it in writing. You don't need to necessarily get an attorney involved, but you can pull something off of the internet. You can write down what you are agreeing to on a piece of paper. I don't know how well any of that will protect you in the instance when something might happen, or where there might be some sort of discussion about getting out of the lease. But at a minimum, having written in writing what is included and what is not, and what the cost is huge in terms of both parties feeling well versed, well respected, and having clarity going into this agreement and arrangement. So first of all, get the agreement in writing. Next, you're going to want to really clarify what is included in the lease. So it may be that you are just leasing this horse and it's going to be an off-site lease, which means Susie Q at Barn A says, you can lease my horse and you can take it wherever you want, and you're just paying me for the ability to have access to this horse. That would be a situation to where you would have a lease agreement with Susie Q, but then you're also going to have a board agreement wherever you might be boarding and riding this horse. For the purposes of this episode, we want to focus really on that lease agreement, which is the first agreement that you're going to have. Often you will have 2, a lease agreement and a board agreement, unless it's all included in one. So can board be included in a lease agreement? Absolutely, but you want that specified. Is what you are paying to have access to this horse covering someone taking care of it? You also really want to get clarity on what pieces of caring for this horse are you responsible for. So horses have many needs, vet needs, which can include routine vet visits for shots and things like that. But what if a problem comes up? Are you, as the person leasing the horse, the one who is responsible for those vet bills, or is the owner or the person who's leasing the horse the one who will ultimately be responsible? There might be something in the agreement that you are responsible for routine care, but maybe not, I don't want to call it catastrophic, I don't know a better word, maybe like if injuries come up, right? Who's paying for that sort of thing? Get that clarity before you sign anything. Are you paying for the farrier as they come on a regular basis? Are you paying for feed, right? And a lot of this, again, might be in a separate board agreement. You want to know these things going into it so you have a very clear idea of what you're going to end up paying for and how much you're going to pay. Something else that I have seen in a lot of lease agreements when the trainer is the person leasing the horse out is they will include a couple of lessons in the lease agreement, whether that's one lesson a week, 2 lessons a week. Sometimes the lease agreement includes that. And that's something that you honestly can negotiate with whomever you are leasing the horse from. If you think the lease is worthy of including some sort of training, go for it. Have that conversation and then include it in the agreement if it's something that you both have agreed to. The other piece of it is someone carrying insurance on this horse? Now, if you are the one who's responsible for all of the vet care, both routine and if anything wonky might come up along the way, then you're going to want to have some sort of insurance so that you have a cap on what you might be forced to pay. So find that out, right? Are you carrying the insurance or is the owner carrying the insurance? Similarly, things that you're going to want to really dig into is what are you allowed to do with this horse? I never thought this was something that there would be question about, but as I've talked to different horse folks and people who have leased horses, what I've realized is sometimes the person leasing the horse out has requirements of where you're allowed to show, how many shows you're allowed to do, who is allowed to trailer the horse, and that there are very strict limitations on this. So again, I would include that in the lease agreement as well. What are you allowed to do with a horse? Can you take the horse off property? Can you have other people ride the horse? Can you jump the horse when the trainer is not around, right? Get really clear and ask some of these questions. I don't know that these are all of the questions to ask, but I'm hopeful that me kind of spitballing things and sharing things that I have seen will have questions pop up in your head too of, oh, I should get clarity on this, right? So the next piece that we need to break down, which is actually the most complicated, I think, because I've seen a million different ways that folks can charge for a lease, is the cost piece of it. So if you have a horse that is a bit more proven, maybe will be engaging in a little more upper level activity, you will often have a lease fee that comes as a flat fee on top of any sort of monthly care price. Now remember, the monthly care price is often a boarding agreement, right? Where you are somehow taking care of, paying for the care of the horse. But in upper level horses, or just in horses that have proven themselves to be quite skilled at whatever their job is, they will often come with a lease fee, which is, again, a flat fee. I have seen these range anywhere from $1,500 for a partial lease all the way up to $10,000 for a full lease. So that's something to consider as you start evaluating the cost of a lease. If you're at a lesson barn and they're offering that you can lease one of the horses there, sometimes they won't even charge a lease fee. You'll just pay a monthly $700 as an example. That might include a lesson on its own and a specified number of days that you can ride the horse for. Sometimes they won't have that lease fee attached, but in other cases, there is a lease fee in addition to some sort of monthly care that you are providing. So I would tackle this topic very early on in your conversation about leasing. Before you even get into a contract, ask, what is the cost of this? And yes, while some things are negotiable, Often a lease fee is not going to be completely cut in half or erased. So get all the information as early as you can. So the last topic that I wanted to chat about are considerations for things that you could ask to be included in the lease agreement that you may not have thought of. Something fairly common that I've seen is some sort of clause that says this is a lease to own option. This is most prevalent if there is a lease fee attached to the agreement. Let's say you're paying $5,000 for a 1-year lease on a horse. Often you could have a clause put in the contract that says you, as the person leasing, might get the first opportunity to buy the horse. It could say that that $5,000 lease fee could go towards the purchase price. And also, you could put in that lease agreement an agreed upon purchase price. I know for us, when we leased Phoebe, we asked for that. We weren't quite ready to buy her, but we knew that likely her value would go up over the course of the year that Chloe worked with her, that she took lessons, that Christine helped support both of them, and that they competed. And we ideally wanted to lock in the purchase price if we could. So that's something that you can have a conversation about with whomever you are leasing the horse from. Could this be a lease to own option? And if so, could we cap the purchase price? They may not agree to it, but it's still something to consider having a conversation about. Another clause that you might want to consider including, or at least addressing, is what happens if this horse gets hurt, or what happens if this horse turns out to not be a good fit for my kiddo? Is there a way that we can substitute another horse at the barn so that my kiddo can ride, right? So having these conversations and writing them in the agreement can be really important, because the last thing you want to happen is either the horse gets hurt or something happens to your kid, or it just ends up not being a good fit, and you don't know where you have flexibility and what you can do other than continue to pay for a horse that for whatever reason might be unrideable. Have that conversation. What happens if? And then write that into the agreement. Another clause that I would at least consider having a conversation about, and most ideally putting in the contract itself, is the owner okay with your kiddo and or you using the horse on social media? I mean, I think 5 or 10 years ago, this would not have even been an issue, but with the prevalence of YouTube and social media, is the owner cool with you using video of your kiddo riding the horse and posting on YouTube or other social media platforms? Have that conversation beforehand, right? So that there's no hiccups along the way or questions as these things pop up. And then lastly, I would highly encourage you to consider and also have a conversation about how can this lease be terminated, or can it? Can you give a 60-day notice if this is not working out to end the lease, right? Do you need to give a certain amount of time of notice even at the end of the lease? So let's say you're leasing for 1 year. Does the owner expect for you to let them know 2 months before the end of the lease what your plans are? Have these conversations beforehand so that they aren't surprising points of contention along the way. These are all things that I wish, as we stepped into our first lease and even some of them in our second lease, I wish I would have thought to consider and at least have that conversation with the owners. So I hope this is a pay it forward opportunity to where you are benefiting from my rambling over things to consider. So that's all for this week's Broke Horse Mom episode. In our next episode, which will be coming in 2 weeks, we've shifted our publication schedule to an every other week schedule. I found that moms are actually very busy and may not be able to listen to one podcast episode per week. But our next episode that we have launching is a conversation with my friend Elizabeth Howell, whose daughter actually rode for an NCAA equestrian team. So we are digging deep into college riding, opportunities for scholarships, and really what that looks like, in case some of us are thinking our kids might be interested in that. So until next time, Mama, keep showing up at the barn and for yourself. Friend, thanks for listening to Broke Horse Moms, the podcast for all of us who swore this was just a phase. Want more? Head to brokehorsemoms.com and sign up for our virtual Barn Family newsletter. That's where I share behind-the-scenes extras, show season survival tips, gear recommendations, and horse mom life hacks. Basically, it's everything I wish someone had told me when Chloe first said she wanted to try horseback riding. I'll see you there.